Welcome to Beyond the Build, where we take you behind the scenes of the commercial construction industry with the people, policies, and planning that shape our industry, communities, and economy. I'm your host, Kelvin Enfinger. Today's conversation steps a little beyond the job site and into the bigger picture of regional growth and economic development. Our guest is Jennifer Conoley, President and CEO of Florida's Great Northwest, an organization that plays a critical role in recruiting industry, supporting job creation, and helping Northwest Florida position for long-term economic success. Her perspective gives us a unique look at what companies are really looking for when they choose where to locate, how infrastructure and workforce factor into those decisions, and what communities need to be doing today to stay competitive in the future. Jennifer, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Kelvin. I'm delighted to be here with you today.
Thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to join us. I want to dive right into a little bit of your background and career path. And so, if you don't mind, tell the listeners, and I'm always interested as well, to hear what made you decide to get into economic development.
Well, like many economic developers, I fell into the industry, and I'm just so fortunate that I did, because I had no idea that there were paid professionals that helped generate economic prosperity for our communities. So let me first start with kind of my beginnings, because it really all melds into the story of economic development. So I'm a lifelong Northwest Floridian. I was born in Birmingham, Alabama, but my parents moved to the tiny town of Port St. Joe, Florida after I was born. And it was so my dad could get a good paying job at the paper mill in Port St. Joe as an electrician. And so my parents started their family there, and my brother and I enjoyed small town living and everything. That town really operated on the back of the paper mill and the other supporting industry sectors that went into that. And so when the decision was made to shutter the paper mill, it devastated our whole area. And so my family had to relocate, but it was around the same time I was going to college. So I ended up going to Florida State University and got my degree in public relations, and then moved to Panama City shortly after that. Started in social service nonprofit work, and then just kind of stumbled into the marketing public relations field at the Bay County Economic Development Alliance in time. And I really had no experience. They just hired me because of my marketing experience. And that's really where I cut my teeth on all sorts of insights and projects. I remember one of the grassroots campaigns I worked on was the local property tax abatement referendum. And so we had to speak to the voters of the city of Panama City and encourage them to renew that program for an economic development incentive for the city of Panama City. So I learned a lot in that role at the Bay EDA. And then I was fortunate to then move into a regional position with the economic development team of Gulf Power at the time, part of Southern Company, and worked alongside so many great leaders and just learned so much about the electric utilities value of why they invest in economic development efforts, and learned so much along the way there. And then I was very fortunate to be selected for this role that I currently have at Florida's Great Northwest as the CEO in March of 2020, which was right along the pandemic timeframe. So I'm next month, I'll celebrate 6 years at the organization. I am just so passionate about this region and believe that all of our communities can be successful in attracting companies here. And so that's what I get to do alongside our team every single day.
When you think about moving from public relations into more of the economic development world and then taking the helm of Florida's Great Northwest during the pandemic, I mean, what an interesting time and transition that must have been for you.
Yeah, I was super grateful that I already knew a lot of the leaders and stakeholders, because we all had to move to a virtual environment. And I guess thankfully, too, our organization learned some efficiencies because we are spread out around, we are a 13-county regional economic development organization. So we stretch from essentially Pensacola to Tallahassee up to the state line of Alabama and Georgia. And so that is quite the territory. So we really try to be meaningful about how we market the region and how we connect with our stakeholders. And it was an interesting time, but we learned a lot. And it's gained us so much momentum over the past few years.
It is a large territory, and that's what's so interesting about Florida's Great Northwest is the amount of area that you guys are covering and connecting with local elected officials and economic developers that are working within these counties and these little specific regions. So it's really impressive when you look at the amount of work that you guys do to cover such a large region. And we're going to get into a little bit of how you work with those regions here in just a few minutes. But let's go ahead and get right into what's going on right now at Florida's Great Northwest. And let's talk about some projects that you're primarily focused on right now across our region.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think some good context to start with is that we are the region's marketing arm. So we're the regional business brand for Northwest Florida, because when you think about the competition for companies that could operate anywhere in the world, anywhere in the United States, trying to make sure, certainly we want Florida to be part of that conversation. But Florida is a large, diverse state. I like to say that we're 5 states in one, and Northwest Florida is like its own state because we're very different than our friends in Miami. And we have to figure out what sets us apart and make sure that the decision makers who are looking at where they should locate a company or help expand in a territory, we want at least Northwest Florida to reach a state of consideration for their projects. So we do that as that regional brand. And then I like to call us the professional matchmakers, because what we're able to do is identify these opportunities and then filter them down to our 13 county economic development professionals. We package the opportunities together as a regional package and then help the company shortlist where they want to be based on the information and the proposals that they have in front of them. And so we have had a lot of success in doing that. We certainly work with site selection consultants directly, but we've had a lot of success in our own proprietary proactive lead generation program, where we are doing outreach to companies in primarily the target industry sectors like aviation, aerospace, manufacturing, light assembly work, forest products, logistics distribution. And that's really where we've seen a lot of our momentum come from. When you think about and look back over, I'm going to, say just since 2020, G&W's direct leads have resulted in over 1,500 announced jobs for Northwest Florida. And so that's ranged, some of our big wins, especially over the past couple of years. One I'll highlight was in Wakulla County, which is just south of Tallahassee in Crawfordville. And always been thought of as a bedroom community for Tallahassee, but they have a great industrial park called Opportunity Park. And so we were able to work with the Wakulla County team to help attract Point Blank Enterprises to that site. And so that is a county designated by the state of Florida as a rural area of economic opportunity. So that also brought a different slate of added values and incentives. And that project will add 300 jobs at, complete build out of what they're looking to do. But they do body armor for law enforcement and the U.S. military. And so that was such an exciting project to work on the far eastern end of our region. And then one more example on the far western end that, again, a direct result of a relationship Florida's Great Northwest brought to the table was a company based in the United Kingdom called Field International. They were interested in the southeastern United States, and we got in front of them at a trade show. They had not really thought about Northwest Florida at all. But then through a series of conversations and the proposal process, the company said, you know what, we have fallen in love with Escambia County. Pensacola is where we want to be, and we want to be there so much that we're going to actually open up our global headquarters. We're going to move our global headquarters from the United Kingdom to Pensacola. And so that's a smaller project starting out with 50 jobs, but we think that they'll end up growing second phase to at least 100 or more. And so many cool stories like that popping up all over the region.
we've seen some aerospace growth in Pensacola, certainly seen big announcements coming to Okaloosa County. And even recent announcements over in Bay County as well that are directly connected to the aerospace industry. Outside of that, what are some other industries that are just really kind of showing the most growth right now in our region?
Yeah, one that we have our pulse on is specifically the marine industry. We have seen a lot of cool companies select Northwest Florida recently as well in that sector. American Magic in Pensacola, as well as Voltori Electric, which just announced they'll be building a facility in Panama City. And what we are and we've been heavily involved in talks with our friends at the U.S. Navy and the Maritime Industrial Base, as well as their partners in the Defense Industrial Base Institute, really wanting to make sure Northwest Florida was on their radar screen for helping to restore America's maritime dominance. And so we have a rich history of shipbuilding and boat building in the region, from industrial boats to recreational craft. And so there's a lot of great skill sets here that transferable skills and everything that overlap between some of the different industry sectors. So we have been so proud to help spotlight that as well and get a lot more attention in the maritime sector. So that is something that we're seeing as well. And, we've got 3 ports too that are active working in Port of Pensacola, Port Panama City, but then we also have some assets still at Port St. Joe. Again, back to my hometown, where you've got Eastern Shipbuilding that has a yard there, as well as 2 other ones in Bay County. So it's really just, again, telling that story and connecting those dots, because a lot of people might not understand the connectivity that our communities have to one another. And you look at, like, from a labor force, the commuting radius and what that looks like, and being able to broaden that labor force pool in just our nearby counties. And so, even if you're looking in Northwest Florida, think about Mariana, where Jackson County is. They are the only county in the state of Florida bordered by 2 states, Alabama and Georgia. So there are just a lot of cool synergies that we just have to make sure that people are aware of and telling our story. And that's what's made us attractive to these companies that we've been working to recruit as well.
There's a lot of uniqueness in the communities across Northwest Florida and how diverse it is and the opportunities. And you hit on the Port of Pensacola and the Port of Panama City, and that's 2 good examples of 2 ports that are doing a little bit different things, but have certainly seen an increase in new business and new opportunity, and to see both of our ports thriving well and on the horizon, potentially even having more opportunity coming down the pipeline soon. I do want to talk a little bit about what advantages does Northwest Florida have that maybe attracts new business to the area. I think it's an easy one, right? It's beautiful beaches. You've just got a lot of beautiful communities spread out across North Florida. Seems like an easy decision to me if you're looking at bringing your business here and planting roots into Northwest Florida, outside of just wanting to be, close to the beautiful beach and be a part of the beautiful communities we have. What are some other advantages that we have at the time?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. That quality of place aspect. I'll also add, outside of our natural beauty and the natural recreational opportunities that offers, safety and security is something that we hear a lot about too, especially from some of our northeastern state companies that are working in that area and the geography. So that's certainly something to package together. But 2 other ones that I would absolutely want to make sure I talk about, and I'd be remiss going back to my marine comment, I forgot to add to the list Bird On, which is looking at expanding again at the Port of Pensacola, 2,000 jobs. That is a newly announced one that is certainly transformational for the area. And I had the opportunity to listen to the CEO's presentation the other day at a meeting, and he solidified one of what I know our selling point is in Northwest Florida, and it is our hidden talent supply. So many people are still surprised to know that across our region, and really, if you're thinking about it, it's really a 2.5 to 3 hour drive time, you have 6 military bases that are located here. And that is such a high concentration when you look across the United States. So Florida's Great Northwest was able to commission a study last summer with the help of our friends at the University of West Florida's Haas Center. And we looked and did a deeper dive into our military talent because we had been estimating that about 3,000 men and women were probably separating from our 6 bases every year. But now, thanks to this study, we have a lot better key indicators that are data-driven metrics where our companies can then feel more confident in selecting our region. So we found through that study that on average, 5,200 men and women are retiring from our military bases in Northwest Florida every year. So that is significant.
Impressive number.
It is. And their average age is about 38. So they're young. They have families. Many of them already have families in the region. And we were able to take that a step further and have some additional survey data that shows us that 47% of those exiting the military, they want to stay in Northwest Florida after their retirement. 47%. And on top of that, 19% are undecided. And one of the key factors of that would help them make their decision to stay is a good job opportunity. And so that is so encouraging when you add that to our labor force participation rate and our population growth. The overall workforce story is really key to the attraction of companies here. And the other one is the special economic development incentive fund we have for coastal Northwest Florida with Triumph Gulf Coast. That is a result of the 2010 Deepwater Horizon oil spill. And that has been a game-changing fund that it can't go directly to a company, but through public-private partnerships, we have been able to attract a significant amount of companies to the region because of the dollars that fund can bring to bear. And so those are really the top 2 reasons that I would say. And then the third would be that the quality of life piece that's attracting companies and, just other people in general to the region.
Triumph is something that has been instrumental in bringing a lot of these new businesses to our region. I believe Triumph still has somewhere around, is it 800 million left to contribute to economic growth, business growth in our region?
Yep, that's about right. And they have, in addition to that, they're seeing opportunities with the legislature approved for them to use the interest money that's been accruing over time for Northwest Florida as well. So we're really excited to see that continue into the future. They'll be getting $80 million payments until the year 2033. And so there's still a lot of opportunity left with that fund.
Certainly looking forward to see what happens in the years to come with what's left of that. It has improved the landscape of our business community. And, as an industry, we're certainly appreciative of it. You hit on talent pipeline a little bit. I think we're often guilty of just thinking that oftentimes retired military service members, men and women, are a direct fit to aerospace. And when we think about aerospace growth in our community, we always think about, well, that makes sense, right? Because of the retired military we have here that are in that career pipeline that can fill those jobs. Retired service members have a skill set that crosses over many, many industries. And I think businesses are beginning to see that as part of a way to fix what we're facing in our industry. And a little bit what I want to talk about and how it's affecting you all is right now, current numbers suggest somewhere around 360,000 workers that we are short nationally in the construction industry, which obviously affects project schedules, project cost, and those sort of things. But what are you all seeing when it comes to getting some of these projects off the ground?
Yeah, and that's a concern across the country with labor force, and certainly it's felt in all the different sectors. So it's something that we have to address. But I think when you talk about the robust total talent pipeline that we as regional stakeholders have really doubled down to focus on, I think that we are trying to hit it from all angles. So certainly focusing on that military talent pipeline and having additional skill bridge programs to help facilitate skill sets of what the skill sets that the workers or the military personnel have today and how that translates into commercial applications, whether that is in aerospace or perhaps other transferable occupations. We want to make sure that, we are helping to provide the pathway, but also making sure that in the school systems, our public school districts, our technical schools, our state colleges, our universities, I think we do a really great job here in this region to all work together to make sure that we are fostering a collaborative spirit within making sure that we are meeting industry needs and working together to do so that we are being thoughtful about the resources that we have. And, I've even seen, this has been something that I've been excited about with my regional hat, just the collaboration of, we've had some announcements in some counties where they are already starting to hire for certain skill sets. Let's take maintenance, repair, and overhaul operations in one county who will need A&P mechanics. We have one state college that is graduating quite a bit of them today, but the job opportunities aren't as robust in that particular community. So we're reaching across those county lines to make sure those students know about the opportunities and the businesses know what is being done at their next door state college that might not be in their county line community, but it's in that commuting time radius. So I think that it's an area that we have a lot of opportunity to do more in. I know with Florida's Great Northwest, we also have a foundation and a project that we have adopted to really dive in deeper on in 2026 is called Northwest Florida Career Pathways. And so it's really been a marketing program to help educate students and parents about the career opportunities and what those pathways look like. Maybe it's starting in the middle school or high school of a certain career academy. Let's maybe say it's an engineering career academy. And then they can see if they take it to the next level, what does that look like and how do they get there? And then if they exit to go into the job market, what does that average salary look like? If you go to the next level, what does that look like? And so we want to be that resource that really paints that story together. We're educating the outside community and those C-suite executives about Northwest Florida's opportunities. But we would be doing a disservice if we're not offering some sort of mechanism to help educate the people that live in our communities about those pathways and opportunities. So we're trying to play a role in that area as well.
We've seen a huge increase in the conversation for workforce development over the past couple of years and new programs coming along, and Associated Builders and Contractors as a whole across Florida is the largest private provider of apprenticeship programs in the state. And so as an association, we're doing all we can to attract kids into these apprenticeship programs and do our part to train, and partnering with the school districts and the local technical colleges to make sure that we're bridging the gap to be able to provide that pipeline of students to apprenticeship programs and get them out there in the job market. But you hit on something that's really critical when you mentioned middle school. And that's something that I've been very pleased to see in our school districts where career and technical education is being discussed in middle school. So we're reaching the kids before they're getting in high school and trying to make decisions about careers, taking it back to mom and dad and having those conversations with mom and dad, because that's part of the problem, because we've kind of quit talking about skilled trades and workforce development as a whole, not just for our industry, but even for the jobs that create opportunities or opportunities that are created from the projects that you all are bringing to the region. There is a skilled workforce, great paying jobs that's needed for those businesses. And so getting mom and dad back on board and talking about it around the dinner table with their kids and getting them interested in doing something that they will probably actually enjoy and make a really good living at is important. So I'm pleased to see the conversation and what's happening with it. And fingers crossed that we just keep increasing that and utilizing that along with the workforce that we have that is retiring out of the military across Northwest Florida. I want to move a little bit into infrastructure and site readiness. There's a lot of opportunity up and down I-10, right? If you just get in the car and drive down I-10, one of the advantages we have is we have a lot of land between Pensacola and Tallahassee, even north and south of I-10. but not all that land is ready. And we've got some industrial parks that are certainly ready. When it comes to site readiness, what does that mean to you all when you're working with a client and trying to put that package together? Is there an advantage that maybe one community has over another when it comes to site readiness and preparation as it pertains to just infrastructure in general?
Yeah, so that is something we hear often because a lot of times when these companies come to us, they think that, their message is we are ready to go now. And, risk is a key consideration for them, cost, but timing, speed to market is key. And so there's bound to be holdups in the project from all sorts of different directions. So if you can have present a site that is truly ready to go, then you're going to be more competitive and in the game. You're going to stay in the game longer because ultimately in economic development site selection, they're looking at how do we eliminate more sites, not how do we find more to bring to bear. So I've been really proud over, my career in Northwest Florida economic development, seeing a lot of our partners step up in the way of site development. We've had great leadership with our power partners in Florida Power and Light, Power South Energy Cooperative, and Duke Energy that all offer different types of readiness programs that are allowing the communities to, if they haven't already identified those industrial sites, and then really make thoughtful and smart decisions about what the things are that are needed to get them competitive. And so we have seen so much great progress in that alone. And I could give you several examples of company announcements that have been because the site has been ready. So I think where we stand out too, as far as Northwest Florida, is we do have that room to grow. You mentioned that earlier. We are not built out, and I'm also very proud that we've been thoughtful about where we want to see our industrial activity, because we also want to think about we need the communities to be supportive of where the next industrial project goes. And so when we've done all this work behind the scenes and we're ready to start getting the public to interact with where the next steps of the project, we want them to be on board because it is in an appropriate industrial space, meeting all the zoning requirements and whatnot that have been laid out. So, I can't stress enough that anything that can be done to have the site ready is just going to keep our communities more in the game and not eliminated from these opportunities.
So, thinking down the road here, some communities might say we've seen so much growth in Northwest Florida. There's really no need for us to be thinking about opportunities for us or to be thinking long term, 10 to 20 years. Some may be saying, well, growth will slow down and we will not continue on this trend that we've been seeing over the past few years. What would you say to a community that is maybe not thinking long term, 10, 20 years down the road, that potentially thinks that the big booms happen in Northwest Florida and we're not gonna be seeing long-term growth? Would you have any advice to a community of what they need to be planning for and doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you cannot take your foot off the gas pedal in this moment. You never know what industry sector may change. You think about the rapid transformations that we're seeing in all sorts of different industry sectors, how AI is coming in and changing a lot of the ways that we do day-to-day activities. I think that because of those transformations, you want to make sure that you're always thinking about how to keep your economy diversified, because you never know when one company will make a decision to shutter a facility or to consolidate or whatever that looks like, or, might go into bankruptcy. There are all these scenarios in the normal course of business. And so it's incumbent upon us to know the trends, to stay on top of that as the economic development community, but also make sure that, we don't get complacent. Because again, there are plenty of examples where, the textile industry got moved offshore over the years, and there's just so many changes. So that actually is, we're excited. Something we're excited about at Florida's Great Northwest is we received a Triumph Gulf Coast grant late last year, for $4.7 million over the next 4 to 5 years for us to really enhance and go back to our regional strategy for economic transformation called Northwest Florida Forward. And we want to collect all of that data and think about how our region looks in the next 5, 10, 15 years so that we can put strategies in place to be ahead of the curve and the competition and stay relevant. And I think that's, as long as we keep that mindset of staying relevant as a community, as a region, as a state, then we'll be in good hands for the future.
Well said. And you hit on something a little bit earlier that I think is an important note when you were talking about community engagement and getting buy-in from the public. Growth can be painful, right? And we know that it does come with its challenges, and some people are more accepting of it than others. What would you say to the community member that is maybe a little hesitant of seeing the landscape of their community change? You start seeing industrial park growth and new businesses coming. And for someone like myself, I don't see it just as an opportunity maybe for the construction industry. I see it as an opportunity for good paying jobs, maybe for our children and grandchildren to be able to stay at home and be able to work right here in Northwest Florida. That's my thoughts, though. What would your comments be to a community member that's maybe a little concerned with seeing new business come into their area and changing the landscape of it a little bit?
Yeah, I think you're spot on with your comments. I would agree with all of them. I know the pain points, especially coming from growing up in a small town here myself and not wanting it to be completely transformed. But I think that's where good community strategy and planning can play a role to where you have that delicate balance. And I think that is also what it's all about. So, but I do get a giggle sometimes out of people. I have friends of mine that will say, "Oh, well, we really need Publix in this community," and those types of business decisions follow rooftops and everything and the growth, and so you can't have it all the way. So I think it's just making sure you have those stakeholders around the table. You have the opportunity for community input so that you do have that alignment for maybe where you want to be. And it is about creating that economic stability and diversification. And that's what I keep on a point that I think is important to reiterate. In Northwest Florida, we have tourism, obviously a wonderful industry sector that many people benefit from. We have our military, again, the defense contractor community and everything that is a part of that. And then it's the other leg of the stool, that diversification, so that if we do, heaven forbid, have some sort of tragedy, what will keep us as stable as possible and keep people employed with those good paying jobs and benefits so that we can continue to see our communities thrive. And I think it's that balance that economic development is really all about.
Yeah, change can be scary, and I certainly understand that. And it not only it changes the landscape of your community, but it can do simple things like maybe changing your daily commute when you see growth in an area. And sometimes in some of our communities, infrastructure can be a pain point of trying to keep up with the amount of growth. When I think about an obstacle for growth in our community, I think about that. And I think about one of the easiest solutions that I think is out there is local option sales tax in our communities throughout our region to help improve infrastructure and to keep up in those areas. However, there can be pushbacks in communities to increase any kind of taxation. This is a very, I guess, strong conservative region across Northwest Florida, and don't always support increase in any kind of taxation. But I know that's a challenge when it comes to trying to make sure that infrastructure is keeping up with the new business growth. Is there anything else that you see in our region that's just really an obstacle to what you're doing and to what the EDA directors in the local communities are doing?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right with the infrastructure piece, especially in our more coastal, more populated communities. I think we do still have, kind of going back to our conversation before, you have the NIMBYism, not in my backyard. They know that, people want good paying jobs, but then the realities of what is needed to lure the companies here is another thing. So I think that is still an issue. And then if you look into more of our rural communities, it is having convincing the companies that we can get the workforce that is needed our region. And I would say that even for really most of our communities, it's just a conversation that we have to continue to mold and craft, and again working with our other partners to make sure that companies feel comfortable in what the workforce solution is that we have to offer, but also honoring that we all do have pain points, and figuring out how we work together to create other strategies to keep people here and interested in the job openings that are currently available.
Well, you get a unique challenge with that because you get to kind of hear all the pain points from all the communities across the region. So you get to dabble in a little bit of the issues everywhere when it comes to that. So I'm
Yeah.
sure you probably have a unique perspective of different issues in different communities from Pensacola to Tallahassee.
Well, and you know what? The other thing, though, from a broader perspective that I do want to mention is, we still compete heavily with our other southeastern states when it comes to economic development incentives. And so that also can be an issue if you've got a state like Alabama who continues to be very aggressive in what they can bring to bear as far as perhaps cash incentives, and that really tips the scales for us. We don't really do that in Florida anymore. And so we have great partners at Florida Commerce, and that are aware of the struggles that are particularly for us that border these other states. But, it's something that we have to fight a little harder for compared to some of I call them our name brands across the state, like our Orlando's, Miami's, Jacksonville's, Tampa's, where that is an automatic draw. And so we just have to sharpen our pencils a little better and figure out the other types of things that add to that overall value proposition. And sometimes we have to be really creative of what that looks like.
We've kind of hit on this a little bit already, but I'm thinking of like misconceptions about economic development, what it is and what it isn't. And you hear different things and you'll hear comments. If you had an opportunity like you do right now to maybe say, I want to set the record straight on one misconception about what we do or don't do, what would it be?
Well, I think it goes back to my incentives piece about how economic development projects get incentivized. And it is because of the competitive nature that we're trying, the company could operate anywhere, and we're trying to do all we can to convince them that this offers, right, the speed to market, low risk, low cost environment that a company needs to be successful. So the corporate welfare term is one that we've heard many times
I've
over
heard
the
that one often quite a few times. Yeah.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
glad you brought that up. Yeah.
Yes, I would say corporate welfare is something that is just it's not a fair term because, again, we're not trying to convince retail outlets to come, and yes, they will come because of the population growth and the rooftops. We are trying to convince a company that they can be successful here in our region. And, that trade off is for us good paying jobs for our community members. And sometimes there's a delta there, and we have to figure out how we as a community can lure them here and let them be our partner long haul.
It's an interesting topic. And I'm glad you brought up corporate welfare because as I mentioned, a few minutes ago, I've heard it myself. When I think about waste, and we talked about taxation, and we think about waste in community governments and with tax dollars and across the state and federal government, you hear it. But this is one thing that I see not only you all, but EDAs across this region that you're working with is creating good paying jobs for our next generation. And I can't think of one thing as a community that each and every one of us ought to be getting behind. So it does frustrate me when I hear the term corporate welfare as it pertains to the work that's being done through you guys and through our local community EDAs, because I just see the opportunity that lies ahead for Northwest Florida and the opportunity that lies ahead for the generations to come, and the framework and things that are being done now that will have a ripple effect that'll go far beyond what you and I will ever be able to see. And I think sometimes people just put the blinders on and forget to think about their kids and grandkids. Well, so we're talking about looking ahead. Where do you see, in your words, Northwest Florida maybe in the next 5 to 10 years?
Where I see Northwest Florida in the next 5-10 years is really being even more well known in that Gulf Coast corridor for both aerospace and maritime work. And I think that is just from the natural synergies that we've already built together with the aviation assets of our military bases, with the commercial aviation companies we've already been able to attract, Williams International, Leonardo, IAG Aero Group. And then you think about the marine piece that we've already talked about. And I think we are well positioned to take this momentum that we've built, and that we're riding this wave, and it's a rising tide that I'm consistently feeling across this whole region. And I think we have an opportunity for both our urban and our rural communities to thrive and flourish, as long as we all continue to work together and focus on that overall picture. I think, when people start having success, it can be very easy to start seeing splinters off of maybe people that want to focus on their own agendas. And I hope that doesn't happen. But I think if we can remain focused in this unified way, then we have a lot more work to capitalize on in those sectors, and really be known for something of an innovation hub along the Gulf Coast corridor.
So important for everybody across Northwest Florida to really hear that and know that, because there's a lot of science that goes into what you guys are doing. And I know some people believe, and it's probably the same people that call it corporate welfare, right? That believe that there's just some, willy-nilly, let's just get any business in here and put them anywhere they'll go, right? There's a lot of work, there's a lot of thought, and a lot of processes that goes into the site selection of what community this is the best fit, because some new growth fits better in other industrial parks across our region than others. Some new growth needs to be an industrial park. Some new growth does not need to be an industrial park, and it can be part of a community without really affecting it in a negative way. And so there's a lot of thought and work that goes into that. And I wanted to highlight that and say how much we appreciate what you guys do and what you bring to our communities. Getting close to wrapping up here, I want to give you an opportunity to tell the listeners of maybe one project or something that you've worked on, maybe recently in the past, that you're just absolutely most proud of, that you want to highlight.
Yes. One absolutely bubbles to the top and comes to mind. So it was early 2021, where through our proprietary proactive lead generation program, Shane Chadwick on my team got in front of a transformer manufacturer out of Pine Bluff, Arkansas. And this company was on our radar screen for potential expansion opportunities. And turned out the CEO had a failed site visit in Texas, and thought, well, I'm just about to give up on this expansion plan that I thought I had, and I'm going to just figure out how to be successful in Arkansas. I mean, they already were, but they were having, just labor challenges. So enter Florida's Great Northwest. And we had a little bit of banter back and forth, and convinced the CEO that he should come down for a site visit and look at 4 properties and counties that were within the region. And so he brought his executive team down, and we showed him from Escambia County, Santa Rosa County, Okaloosa County to Bay County. And from there, he really narrowed down his search and ended up going into the Venture Crossings Industrial Park next to the Northwest Florida Beaches International Airport in Panama City. It was an existing 140,000 square foot manufacturing facility that they had to do a few tweaks, but they were able to get into immediately. So they made that announcement in 2022 that they would be moving into that facility. And today they have about 175 employees making single-phase pole-mounted transformers at that facility. And then the company is Central Maloney, and they've already scouted out another opportunity to build a manufacturing plant in Crestview in Okaloosa County in the future, hopefully. And
Very nice.
so from that, the CEO, Chris, believes so much in what we do at Florida's Great Northwest, came on board as one of our highest level investors with the organization. And he came on board as my new chairman of the board of directors in 2026, serving a 2-year term. And so this man is a very busy one that has plants in Arkansas and throughout Canada and then Florida. And the fact that he believed in this process so much to put his time and energy in is one that I'm so grateful for. So it is the circle of life that reminds me that we are doing good things. We are bringing opportunities to our residents, and we're just honored to do the work that we're able to do.
I got to know, was it that hard of a sell to get some folks from Arkansas down to the Panhandle close to the beach?
Well, they were very familiar with having vacationed on 30A for many, many years. I would be remiss if I didn't add that we did take them out on a boat ride while they were here as part of their scouting out. My husband captained the vessel, took some credit for that economic development win. And, but they didn't realize all of the industrial base that was here in the region. So it is that pulling a few layers back to expose these people, these decision makers who already enjoy our natural assets, to help them understand all of the innovation and research and the people that are here to do incredible work. And it's that exposure that's what's going to continue to help us be more successful.
Last question. For the contractors, what should we be paying attention to right now, or anything coming up that we should have our sights set on and be looking for? Any big announcements?
Well, I can tell you that the pipeline is full, given we've gotten away from the holidays and now we see people start move again. So I think keep your eye on Northwest Florida. I think we're the next biggest thing, and deals are happening behind the scenes. And so it's only a matter of time before we start seeing some more come to bear. And I think just continue to stay involved with staying in the know with what's going on at the local, regional, state level. And you can be part of the conversation. What I love about what we've also been able to do is create Northwest Florida ambassadors, where we've got people that are spreading the good word about the things going on here and the opportunities. So be an ambassador for what's going on in your industry and then in the region, and that momentum will only build, and I think just create more good things happening for us all.
Looking forward to it. We believe there's a lot of opportunity. I've said it here and I say it all the time. Northwest Florida is a great place to live. It's a great place to put your roots down, plant a business. And there's just a lot of great people here that want people to be a part of their community. So last thing, tell the listeners where they can find out more about Florida's Great Northwest.
Yeah, so we have a ton of great resources at floridasgreatnorthwest.com. You can engage with us on all of the socials, but we've got some military talent study I referenced earlier. That is on our website. It is an interactive dashboard for an opportunity for people to take a look at. There's also a sites and buildings database. We have a ton of data resources related to digging in deeper in all of the communities across the region. And we're happy if anybody has any questions or we can be of assistance. We would always welcome the opportunity to share more with any of your listeners.
Jennifer, I appreciate you taking the time to join me today. Thank you for the work y'all do. And we're going to keep looking for those projects that y'all are packaging up and sending over our way.
That's right. Thank you for having me, Kelvin. And I just appreciate your focus on all of these important topics that touch this membership, and especially economic development as part of the ecosystem for growth. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It works well when we all work together, right?
It does indeed.
Looking forward to catching up again soon. Take care.